Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and every sort of month or so, I mean it's supposed to be weekly, but every month or so I write a newsletter all about the future of radio and international radio trends and all of that, and this is it for the 10th of October 2023, called Careful What the Numbers Tell You. For the last 4 years in Australia, Commercial Radio and Audio, the CRA, has been publishing audience figures that break down online audio, adding 2 extra pages marked by radio type to the number pack for each capital city. And they're interesting to read. I link to them in my show notes and the newsletter at james.crid.land. Australia is the only radio market, I think, which publicly splits out broadcast versus online per station. And as you might guess, speech-led radio does very well streaming online. At breakfast in Sydney, for example, 27% of all radio streaming is to right-leaning talkback station 2GB and 12% to ABC Radio Sydney. The all-platform breakfast market leader, the music station KISS 106.5, can only manage a 9.8% online share, which is about half of what it is on broadcast radio. Now that leads to some changes of priority for radio stations, and I'm not entirely sure how helpful they are to audiences. So this week, for example, I'm waking up to ABC Radio Brisbane with a big ticket giveaway for Sir Paul McCartney, who's playing Brisbane on November the 1st, in a concert that went on sale in August, still weirdly isn't anywhere near sold out. Anyway, the only way to enter the giveaway for these tickets is to download the ABC Listen app, to find ABC Radio Brisbane, to scroll down to the picture of Paul, thumbs aloft, Paul McCartney, and enter the code word of the day into the app. It's a fairly transparent push to get more installations of the app and therefore to grow ABC Radio Brisbane's online share. 8.4% in case you're wondering, as opposed to 6% overall. It also sounds really clunky on the air. Nine Radio, the owner of 2GB, gives streaming share equal prominence to overall share in its press releases, which is fine. They've certainly got something to shout about, but it's quite a lot focused to give a relatively small platform because, and I think this is a little bit misleading, the share of listening between broadcast radio, AM, FM, DAB and online isn't given anywhere in the CRA's releases. Now, there's a little bit of a glimpse at the truth with the cumulative audience figures. So 2GB, that's the number one for streaming, let's not forget, reaches 701,000 people weekly on AM, FM, DAB+. Just 169,000 people online, that's 24% of their total. And in total, 2GB reaches 756,000 people, which means that 15% of people listen to both. But the total number of hours spent with online versus broadcast, well, that's nowhere to be seen at all. And now somebody quietly contacted me with those numbers late last year, and at that point, the figures suggested that online radio listening in Australia was just 18% of the total. But looking at the CRA figures, you'd never know that online radio listening was so small, just 18%. It's given equal prominence to broadcast radio, which is still more than 4 times as large. And it's a bit more misleading when you look at the DAB Plus survey numbers, which the CRA publishes separately. Those contain a long list of barely listened to radio stations, only quoting Cume, since total share would look slightly embarrassing. And you'd assume by looking at these numbers that the number one DAB station in Brisbane is Smooth with 88,000 listeners, followed by 97.3 KISS 90s with 60,000 listeners. But that's misleading as well, because the majority of DAB listening is to the big simulcast stations, also carried on AM and FM. But you'd never know, because those figures don't mention the biggest stations on DAB+, which must be 4BC and ABC Radio Brisbane, B105, Nova, all of those. So as a result, many radio journalists or even radio executives think that DAB Plus is a failed experiment and that nobody bothers with it. So it might be interesting to know that while online radio accounts for 18% of all radio listening in capital cities, DAB Plus accounts for 20%. It's quite hard to listen to the radio for any length of time without hearing a promotion for ABC Listen or the iHeartRadio app or Listener or the 4BC app. You'll never hear DAB, though, mentioned on air by any of the big services. But in spite of that, free promotion for apps every hour, all day, DAB Plus does better than online streaming, except no one wants you to know that. Not publicly, anyway. Those numbers are, of course, available directly to the stations. Now, at Radio Days Asia, one Australian radio executive I spoke to was baffled that I was telling them that DAB Plus was bigger than streaming in Australia, and who can blame them if the only numbers they have are presented in this way? So I linked to how the UK does it, and I quite like that in Australia. If that's possible, please, that'd be nice. And a plea to all radio broadcasters out there, please don't focus on growing the 18% to the detriment of the 82%. Owning a big stick that transmits free to your local area is your unique point of difference. There are maybe 40 or 50 other radio stations out there. Why would you want to promote listening on a device that costs your listeners money to listen? It's the same place as you can listen to Spotify and YouTube Music, where there are thousands of other radio stations and where you have no competitive advantage whatsoever. Now, to give them their due, the CRA release for Survey 6 does point out that in the latest survey period, nearly 4.2 million people listened to commercial radio via a DAB Plus radio, and nearly 3.6 million listened via live streaming. So it is there, but you've got to really know to look. Not that I can listen to commercial radio on DAB Plus in Brisbane in my car anymore, mind you, because after a software upgrade to the commercial radio multiplexes, my Toyota car can no longer pick them up, and I can no longer listen to any commercial radio in this city. I linked to a rather tedious video if you can help me understand what on earth is going on. Apparently it's just my car. One set of people slightly evasively tell me it's just my car. Another set of people tell me that it's an issue for all 2015 Toyota vehicles, and they've had multiple reports. Don't really know what the truth is. Frankly, I'm losing patience to find out. The ABC stations, though, are on a separate multiplex. ABC uses Panada rather than Commercial Radio's Factum Radioscape, and they sound just fine. And as an added bonus, none of the ABC radio stations contain advertising for tiles. So I've resigned myself to the fact that I can no longer listen to any commercial or community stations on DAB Plus any longer in the car, and that's a shame, but that's progress, I guess. Other things going on in the news: happy 50th birthday to commercial radio in the UK with LBC and Capital celebrating this month. Also happy 100th birthday to radio in Australia with 2SB, which is now known as ABC Radio Sydney, celebrating next month. And if you'd like an LBC documentary, I link to a 10-year-old one hosted by Clive Bull in my newsletter. It's got me in there, 37 minutes in, if you're lucky. And LBC's 50th tinged with a little sadness for me because my friend Paul Easton would have loved to have celebrated it. Talking of LBC, I love the 404 error page that you get when you try finding a page that doesn't exist on the LBC website. It's worth a peek. A shame to see UK DAB Networks, which is a small-scale DAB operator in the UK in places like Winchester and Basingstoke, go into liquidation. Ash Elford is an excellent man with his heart in the right place. Now, he sees this as a failure, but I see it as a success for running those services for as long as he has and doing some excellent education. So congratulations, Ash. I also linked to a random Dutch man walking around IBC in Amsterdam. If you missed it, it's very good. Disappointed to notice that lots of people are leaving BBC local radio at the moment because of cost cutting. Particularly disappointed given that the BBC is also currently advertising on Elon Musk's hate-filled Twitter website, or X, or whatever the thing is called these days. Why the BBC is funding that, heaven only knows, but anyway, it's up to them, I suppose. The Nicky Campbell Radio 5 Live on BBC News Channel show has been halved in length. You might remember I took a long look behind the scenes not so long back. Everybody says it's absolutely perfect and it's the way that it should have been. So that's all okay then. Matt Deegan listened to a radio station running AI-generated local news. Now in Australia there's an AI voice doing news on Disrupt Radio as well. I'm a little reticent, I have to say, about using AI to produce editorial. Radio GPT, which is Futuri's AI service, has clear human oversight throughout the process. I do think that that's required. I think Kerry Jones has the right idea. He tweeted not so long ago that we should treat AI as an intern who needs their work checked. Yes, congratulations. I would heartily agree with that. In Australia, SBS Radio has a new schedule. It's removed BBC World Service from DAB between 11 and 5. 11 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, which probably means that more listeners will find the excellent ABC News Radio, though, so that's all okay. Nothing to do with radio, but if you like travel blogs, I link to my latest travel blog there, and I've also been rather enjoying using a paid-for search engine as a replacement to Google. It's called Kaggy, I think. Anyway, there's a free trial, which is worth giving it a go if you wanted to. Now, I'm speaking at a few events. Medientage in Munich in October, also Audio Days in Denmark, and PodCon MX in Mexico City in November. It would be excellent to see you at one of those. Thank you to Broadcast Radio, to Clyde Broadcast, Richard Hilton and James Masterton, Brun Audio Consulting, Soma FM, and Media Realms Meta Radio for your support. If you'd like to support my work in any way, you can buy me a coffee. Become a member to give regularly, or just give a one-off coffee or 5. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland. I'm on Mastodon as well. Just give me a search, james@crid.land. You should find me there. And my professional website has a little bit more detail about who I am and what I do and all of that, and whether I can help you further. That's james.cridland.net. And until next time, keep listening.